Hi there. Welcome to the September the 26th episode of Serendipity Needleworks live stream. I'm delighted to be here with you this afternoon. I'm Ellen Johnson. I'm the owner and the founder of Serendipity Needleworks and the Stitchers Club, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun today. I've got a lot of fun things to talk to you about. So before we dive in, now excuse me, excuse me there. Before we dive in, I would love for you to let me know that you can see me and hear me okay, so that we know that the technology is working properly. So if you will, let me know where you're watching from. It's always fun for me to see who's joining me, and I see a thumbs up going there, so I'm guessing you can see me and hear me just fine. So I am, like I said, delighted to be here with you, and we have got a lot of ground to cover today. So let me get my notes here. I don't want to forget anything. So some of the things that we're going to talk about today are things that are going to help you to become a better needlepointer. And I know you're thinking, how am I ever going to learn how to be a better needlepointer just by watching something on Facebook? Well, I have some tips that I'm going to share with you, and I think that you'll find them really helpful. So, all right, so we've got, oh my goodness, we've got lots of people who are joining us. So I'm excited to have all of y'all here. You remember there is a little bit of a delay between when you type something in and when I see it. So if you have questions as we're going through the broadcast today, make sure that you do type them into the comments box, and know that if by some chance I happen to miss it, I will come back and answer those questions after we finish with the broadcast here today. So without further ado, I guess we'll just dive right in. So one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I shared with you is the fact that there are some things that you can do, and those people who are in the Stitchers Club or who have taken any of my courses are going to recognize this right away. And that is that when you start working on a project, you always want to make sure that you begin with the end in mind. And when I say that, I mean think about how it is that you're going to actually finish that project before you even put the first stitch into it. Now, one of the things that I do try to do is every time I get a canvas, actually every time before I even make the purchase, I'm looking at the piece, depending on, I had a needlepoint shop. I know that a lot of you know that. I had a store here in Tuscaloosa. I closed that a little over 2 years ago. And then the store in Birmingham called Needleworks became my home store. Well, they closed in February, but we're fingers crossed down here in Alabama that there's going to be another one open up in Birmingham soon. So that's the latest on the grapevine, or through the grapevine, is that there will be one opening up later this year. So we're all sitting on pins and needles anxiously awaiting that. But anytime I'm beginning to think about making a purchase for a new project, regardless of where I am, if I'm at a shop looking at a canvas or if I'm looking at a canvas online, the very first thing I think about is, what am I going to do with this? Now, I will admit, I'll be the first one to admit that I have made canvas purchases just because I love the canvas, and I'll tell you why. The reason is there have been times in the past when I saw a canvas and I really liked it, but then I passed on it because I thought, well, I don't know that I'll get around to doing that. But then after I go, leave the store or get back home or whatever, it's kind of niggling in the back of my mind, and I can't tell you how many times this has happened to me. It's happened to me several times, but it doesn't happen to me anymore that way. And the reason is, if there is a canvas that I just really, really love, unless it's something that's outrageously expensive, I will usually go ahead, even if I don't know who I'm going to give it to or what I'm going to do with it, I will go ahead and get it, because I have had this happen to me. I've seen a piece that I really, really liked and thought, I don't know what I'm going to do with that, or I don't know who I'd give that to, so I just pass on it. And then I think about it, and I think about it, and I think, oh man, I really wish I had gotten that. And then, I've even gone so far as to call the store back, and the piece is gone, either because it was part of a trunk show or because it was sold to somebody else. And oh well, so now, and that's one reason my stash is a little on the large side. It's because I do if I see something that, and this goes back to that Marie Kondo thing, you know, if it brings you joy, keep it. Well, I'm sort of the mindset, if it brings you joy and it's not going to put you in financial straits, then dire straits, then, you know, like my grandmother used to say, it doesn't eat, it doesn't drink, it just takes up a little bit of space. So that's my logic, which is not always the best logic, but hey, you know, I'm not perfect. None of us are, right? You know, so anyway, but all that to say, I do like to 9 times out of 10 have an idea about what I'm going to do with the piece before I even put my needle to it. And if you've participated in my Needlepoint Success Challenge before, or if you're a member of the Stitchers Club, then you know that I have a plan. It's a step-by-step plan that teaches you how to write your own stitch guides. And the very first step in that is to begin with the end in mind by evaluating your canvas. And I have a canvas here, and I need to, let me put a piece of paper behind it. I don't think you're gonna, I have this canvas here. So this little canvas I love is from Pepperberry Designs. Diane is one of my favorite designers, and I think this is just the cutest little piece. And hang on a second, y'all, I see some comments here. Let me make sure that I'm not missing anybody's questions. I'm sorry to jump away. I'm going to lose, I don't want to lose my train of thought, so I'm going to keep my canvas right here beside me. Okay. Susan says that's what her husband says. Okay. Well, I'm telling you, you know, we, those of us who have supportive husbands are very fortunate. And I don't know if y'all saw the little meme that I posted on in the group here earlier, but I really wish that could be an option on a receipt. Check here if you want this to be your alibi that says, I think, what was it? Congratulations on winning this this stuff. Well, anyway, okay. So this canvas, Pepperberry Designs, is shaped. It's the and I can't remember the name of it, to be honest with you. It's the elf, and of course she has the gifts. This is going to be a stand-up. I've decided that I'm going to stitch this and I'm going to make it into a stand-up. And so that was the very first thing that I needed to determine before I made this purchase, because as much as I love it, Christmas is my favorite holiday and I have so many Christmas canvases. So anyhow, that I saw this and I thought that is just the cutest thing ever. So what am I going to do with it? I think I'll make a stand-up. So now that brings me to the next thing that I always try to do, and that is to, I mentioned it a minute ago, evaluate the canvas aside from what I'm going to do with it. Because when I decide, and let me back up a minute here, when I decide how I'm going to finish a canvas, that either opens up or narrows down the kinds of stitches and threads that I'm going to choose for my project. Because if I'm going to make something into a pillow or something that's going to get handled a lot, then I need to narrow down the options that I'm going to be using for threads and for stitches. The reasons being, threads need to be durable if they're going to be used on a project that's going to get a lot of love, and the stitches need to be durable too. They don't need to snag easily. So that's going to narrow my possibilities down of stitches and threads that I can use. But if I'm going to be doing something with a project that's not going to get a lot of handling, in the case of this piece, it's not going to get a lot of handling. So that opens up, I mean, honestly, almost Pandora's box about what I can do with this piece as far as stitches and threads are concerned. So, I can use silk, I can use novelty threads, I can use wool, cotton, all kinds of things. I can also use stitches that are, the longer stitches, because it's not going to get handled a lot, so it's not going to be prone to snagging. So anyway, that's one of the reasons that you want to determine in the beginning, the very, very beginning, what you're going to do with the piece, because that dictates really what kinds of threads and stitches you're going to use. So let's see. Oh, Selma says she just stitched this piece, so it's a really cute piece. And I see Krista said she saw it and she wants it, or she wanted it. It's really fun. So y'all, I'll have to keep you posted on my progress as I make progress with this piece. So that being said, once you determine what it's going to be, then that opens up the opportunities for evaluating the canvas and determining the kinds of stitches and threads that you can use on the piece based on what its end use is going to be. So And when I say evaluate, this is something that I would highly recommend that if you haven't already purchased Needlepoint Now magazine, if you aren't familiar with it, you really need to check it out because it is truly a treasure trove of information. And I'm not just saying that because I have an article in the last 3 issues. It's truly, it's a magazine that I have subscribed to for years and years and years. I mean, like way years and years and years back, probably, I don't even want to say how long ago, 15 years ago. I may have been one of the first people that found out about it and started buying issues. So it's a far cry from what it used to be. Elizabeth has done a fabulous job with bringing it into the 21st century and keeping things up to date. So it's a really terrific resource for you. So the last 3 issues, I've had a series of articles that I've done for Needlepoint Now, and it's the series is called Stitch with Confidence, and it's all about how to choose stitches for your canvases based on the different design components, or the design components, the elements of design, and the principles of design. So the 3 that I've picked out are texture, perspective, and focal point. I think focal point may be one of them. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm just getting, but anyway. So the 3 things and there's several more. There are way more than just those 3. But what I thought we'd talk about today briefly are those 3. So in the case of this design here, you've got, what is the focal point? Okay, so now let me see. We've got somebody that has asked a question. Okay, so Leanne says, what if you're like me who can never figure out what you want to do with the piece? It can be very overwhelming. You know, Leanne, that's a great question. And so the more you can narrow it down, the better off you're going to be. The main thing being, if you can't decide for sure what you're going to do with it, then I would say at least determine whether or not it's going to be a piece that's going to get a lot of use, or if it's going to be a piece that's going to be something that you just admire, like a stand-up or a pillow that's going to be on a bed that's not going to get a whole lot of use, as opposed to one that would be on a chair or a sofa in a family room where there are lots of children and pets and that kind of thing. And of course, you know, you can always reach out and ask for people's advice, people's suggestions, because sometimes somebody will have a wonderful idea about something that you could do with the project that you never thought of. So really the sky's the limit on what you can choose to do with your pieces. So since you're a member of the Stitchers Club, if you have a situation where you're not sure how you want to finish a piece, I would suggest just popping in there and saying, hey, I've got this project and I don't have a clue how I'm going to finish it. Anybody have any ideas? And the same thing's true too if you'd like to do that inside the Serendipity Needleworks Facebook group, which is a really great place to get helpful hints and tips from fellow Stitchers. That's our private Facebook group, and I'll try and remember to post the link inside this broadcast so that you'll know where you can go and sign up to become a member of that. Or it's just, I don't know, it's Serendipity Needleworks is the group. It's a private group. So you can just maybe Google it or use the search bar on Facebook and see if you can find it if you don't, if you want to. So anyway, so getting back to on this, let me make sure there's no question. Oh, okay, so Susan says, so Susan was telling about she saw the article today. So let me back up. Those 3 articles, the ones that have appeared so far in May, June, July, August, and September, October, are all about choosing stitches and threads for your projects based on the Needlepoint Success System, which is my 5-step system that I use in order to help people learn how to write their own stitch guides. So if you haven't had a chance to pick up those issues of the magazine, I suggest that you do that. There are 3 more articles that are coming out, so it's a 6-part series, and the next one will be November, December. So anyhow, those articles will give you a really solid foundation on the whys behind the which stitch, and that's something that we also delve into inside the Stitchers Club. So anyhow, like I said, getting back to this, the focal point. Let's talk about those 3 designs or elements of design that are principles of design that we are going to be addressing with this canvas. So say focal point. The focal point of this piece is obviously the elf. that the focal point is something that, the main subject of the piece or of the canvas, and that's what you want the person who's looking at the canvas to see first. So this is the elf is the focal point. And then when you start to talk about perspective, well, let's talk about the texture first. So one of the next things that I would do if I were beginning to make a master plan for this project would be to write down the different design components on the canvas. So that would be the trees, that would be the packages, the elf, the background, the snowflakes, the hillsides. And so you make a list of all the different design components, and then beside each design component, you come back and you write out the different textures that those things might have in real life. This is where your stitches and threads come into play. So what you would do in that case then, once you've written down the textures that those things have, then you would find some different threads and that would mimic those textures in real life. If you can't find threads that would mimic those textures, then you can also look for stitches that would mimic those textures. And then you begin to make a list of possible threads and stitches that you could use to stitch this canvas with. And then once you've done that sort of thing, that's where perspective would come into play. So the things that are closer to you in a picture, or the things that are closer to you in real life, appear larger, and the things that are in the background recede or they fade away. So that, bottom line is, the closer something is to you on a canvas or in real life, the larger the stitches can be to convey that sense of proximity. And then in the background, you want those stitches to be smaller, because things that are far away, that appear distant, or that are in the distance, appear smaller. So you would put smaller stitches in the background, whereas the foreground could handle larger stitches. Hope that makes sense. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out and ask. I'm happy to clarify. Okay, so let's see. Okay, there are a lot of questions that are, let's see, I'll have to come back and answer some of those because I don't want to lose our time. We've still got only about 10 minutes left, and I still have some stuff I want to make sure I cover. So Cassandra and Leanne and I think those were the only two that I needed to address. I will make sure that I come back and answer those questions for you after we sign off here today, okay? All right, so in talking about the different stitches and threads that you might use, that brings me to the second point I want to make sure that we go over today, and that is, what is it that is the number one thing that can make you a better stitcher, or that is going to make you a better stitcher? And regardless of whether or not you want to hear it, I'm here to tell you that practice, practice, practice is what does it. It's that kind of that same old thing that, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. Well, how do you become a better stitcher? Practice, practice, practice. The more you practice your stitches, the more you learn about stitches, and the more you learn about different threads and how you compare those, the better stitcher you're going to become. And the only way to do that is to practice. Now, I'm not suggesting that you practice and use your painted canvases as your testing ground. The best thing you can do is to get a doodle canvas. And a doodle canvas is simply a square of blank canvas, whether it be 13 mesh or 18 mesh, and you mount it on a frame. I like to use stretcher bars because I like to cut mine into 8-inch squares because that's easy for me to manage, and it also fits into a project bag super simply, and it's not too big and it's not too small. And you can practice different stitches on your doodle canvas, and you compare them with different threads, and then that gives you an opportunity to learn the different stitches, to learn about how they're put together, helps you to learn how to read a stitch diagram better, and all kinds of things. So the more you practice, the more competent you're going to get, and the more confident you're going to get in your ability to choose the best stitches and threads for your projects. So my number one tip is for you to get yourself a doodle canvas if you don't have one, and then begin to practice new stitches. Do one a week. If you can't do more than that, just do one a week. Commit to doing one a week, and then by the end of the year, you'll have 52 new stitches that you've learned, that you've practiced, that you'll then be able to apply to your needlepoint projects. Now, let me hop over here, and I'm going to share with y'all, I'm going to share with y'all this week's blog post, and this is a perfect place for you to be able to, let me click on that and make sure that it pops up. There we go. So if you haven't been following along with my blog, I'd highly recommend that you do that, because every week I post a different stitch that you can use on your needlepoint projects. And we've been doing an encore tour of some of the favorite stitches and threads from last year's summer thread venture, because inside the Stitchers Club we're doing our summer thread venture there, and we're doing a virtual vacation through England, Scotland, and Wales. And so rather than leaving everybody who's not participating in the Stitchers Club out, I'm doing one stitch a week for different design components that you can use, or stitches that you can use for different design components on your projects. This week it happens to be about skies. And so I don't want to scroll too fast because I don't want to make anybody dizzy. But the stitch that I did this week is called the Moorish stitch. And it's a combination of Scotch stitches, diagonal rows of Scotch stitches, or diagonal Scotch, and tent stitches. And I will pop over here and share with you, this is what the stitch looks like when you stitch it up, and I used watercolors. The thread that I used is watercolors, the Karen Collection watercolors, and the color is Orchid number 185. And you can see how it would be really pretty for a watercolor looking sunrise or sunset sky. So the best thing, like I said, that I can recommend that you do is to simply get yourself a doodle canvas and begin practicing stitches. And try some of the threads in your stash. You don't have to use the same threads that I'm recommending that you use, or that I used on my sample that's on the blog. You can use whatever you want to use. I mean, you can use whatever thread you have. I'll try to, from this point forward, include some other suggestions besides the one that I used for my stitch sample, because you can always back up. If you don't have a needlework store nearby, you can always use DMC. DMC cotton embroidery floss is the go-to if you don't have any other options nearby, and you're having to rely on mail order and you don't really want to do that. You can always go to a big box store like Michael's or Hobby Lobby or Joann's, and you can find DMC embroidery floss or some sort of 6-strand cotton embroidery floss. It may not be DMC, it may be Anchor, or it may be there's some other companies, but that is always something that you can practice stitches with if you don't have any other threads in your stash that you think are appropriate. So I'll try, like I said, to remind y'all about that when I go forward with these other posts. We have one more week inside the Stitchers Club with our UK tour, so that means we have one more week of the encore presentation of the stitch from last year's thread venture. Then we'll pick up and move forward with some other things on the blog, more stitches, things that you can use for different design components on your canvases. So like I said, I wanted to make sure that I shared that with you, so you know that you do have a resource that you can go to if you're looking for stitches to try. And I want to make sure too that I tell y'all, because some of the people inside the Stitchers Club are doing this. They're making their own stitch notebooks. Now, I have a student named Ann, and Ann is actually making a digital notebook. She's doing the stitches, and then she's creating her own digital notebook on her iPad, and is going to have that she can refer to. She's labeling the stitches and using some apps and things to make that a resource for her that she can then go to and refer back to for future use. And then Leanne, who is on here with us, was one thing that I thought was so smart on her part, was that she's really interested in learning the stitches and labeling everything so that she can put the name of the stitch with what it looks like. And I thought, that is so smart, because that's one thing that I do a really bad job with. I constantly am having to look up a stitch in a book because I can't remember what it's called. And yeah, that's a really good, she has inspired me to do a better job of being able to attach the name to what the stitch looks like. So if you make yourself a hard copy of a notebook or a binder, then you can take your stitch samples and you can attach them to we have inside the Stitchers Club, we have what we call our Thread Venture Fun Sheet, which actually is a sheet that you can go in and take notes on, and it's got a little place for you to cut your square of your canvas and attach it, and then there are places for notes about what thread you use, what size needle you used, and all that kind of thing. But you can make your own, and then you can put those in plastic page protectors, and then create a binder of the different kinds of stitches that you can, or the different stitches that you've taught yourself. And I did want to make sure I tell you this, all of my stitches that I share on the blog have a stitch diagram with them, so you can go in and you can look at the stitch diagram and stitch either from your computer or from your phone or from an iPad, a tablet, or whatever. So those are resources there for you, free for you to use, and to help you to develop your needlepoint skills so you can become a more confident stitcher. That's what I'm here to do. I'm here to help, and if you have any questions, of course, always feel free to reach out. All you have to do is send me a private message on Facebook, or you can also send me an email at ellen@serendipityneedleworks.com. Lots of fun and exciting things on the horizon for everybody who is a member of the Serendipity Needleworks family. And again, I invite you to please come in and join our private Facebook group. It's just the Serendipity Needleworks Facebook group. As soon as we get done here, I'll make sure that I include the link to join that, or at least the link to find it, so that you can make sure that you're able to be a part of that. And I do have, and I'm getting ready to share it with you here, if you aren't getting my weekly emails, I would recommend that you sign up and get those, because that gives you the inside scoop on when new information is posted, and gives you all the highlights and ways that you can keep up with what's happening here at Serendipity Needleworks. So thank you ever so much for your time this afternoon. Know that I will come back and answer questions. If I happen to miss yours in the process of this broadcast, I will come back and answer those. And if you think of something after we sign off here, please come back and type it in and ask, because I do come back and check and make sure that I get everybody's questions answered. Try to do it in a timely way. If by some chance I happen to miss a question, reach out to me. Either send me an email and say, hey, I asked this question and you didn't answer it. Sometimes things slip between the cracks. And so as much as I try for that not to happen, it does occasionally. So either send me a message on Facebook, or you can reach out to me by email. I'm happy to help however you're most comfortable with me doing that. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you ever so much for taking time out of your schedule to join me here, and happy stitching.